there folks, I'm standing here by what will eventually become our seed starting bed or the seedling growing bed, and the time lapse you just saw was me yesterday at sunset doing a little bit of prep work here, so in the coming week we can even this out and put about 2 dozen types of seed here to germinate. And I wanted to explain a little bit more about the way we do things here. This is our standard raised bed here. It's not very high, and because we're on a slope, the front side or the lower side of the bed is 20 centimeters, 2 planks of 10 centimeters, and the higher side, the one uphill, is 1 plank of 15 centimeters. So there's not much of a difference, but still there's a gentle slope in this direction. The length is 4 meters and the width is 80 centimeters. So it's about 3 square meters of growing space. For starting the seed, we usually cover the whole thing with this second-hand plastic. It was clear plastic generally, but with years it's not as clear as I would like, but it's still usable, and we have used it for several years. Those are some pieces of 6 millimeter round iron rods, which were very roughly bent to shape, and we just stick those in the soil. It's sturdy enough to keep the plastic tight up top, and inside of the plastic we use a 4-meter length of wood. This is a very thin strip, maybe 4 by 3 centimeters, and this one keeps the plastic tight, and even when we have snow, it does not allow the plastic to sag in the middle and press the seedlings if there are any. The surface of the bed I covered yesterday with maybe 50 liters of sieved, well-aged manure, and below that is our natural soil, which we amended with maybe 200 liters of grass clippings from the lawnmower which we borrowed last year. And the way that we do that is when we constructed the bed, we put the clippings below and then put some soil from another place in the garden where we had to dig it out and cover the clippings. And during the course of the autumn and in the winter, the clippings have decomposed, and when I was prepping the bed yesterday, using the shallow thin hole which I'm using to just mix things up and to remove any weeds that started growing, I saw lots and lots of worm activity, which is very nice to see, and it shows that our system is working. And now what is about to happen in the coming days is I'm going to level this with a plank so it has a level surface. And the soil is already several degrees warmer than the other beds which are not covered. And then I will do a second video about how we start the seeds. We have a time lapse from last year, which I'll try to link in the video here, so you can see how we are working the bed. But generally what we do is just do a shallow indentation, put the seeds inside, cover with some of our fine sieved compost, leave a bit of a space, and then do a second line of seeds, and so on until we fill as much of the bed as we need. You can see that there is some wheat straw residue here, because at some point in the summer, in late summer when we were making the bed, I wanted to be mulched, so I covered it with a layer of wheat straw, but that all decomposed during the winter, which is very nice to see. We had a abnormally warm winter, so this allowed soil life to keep on working. And this bed generally even though it's small and the volume of the air is not large, it still manages to heat the soil up enough for peppers to germinate in April, which means that the nights are usually about 5 degrees and the pepper seeds need way more than that. I'd say at least 20. So I think that this simple system works nice, and it certainly has worked for us nicely in the past. One thing that's interesting to note here is that this raised bed and the way that it's structured, it's not representative of the way our soil behaves. The main reason for that is that it was dug, or more precisely piled on, last year, and also there was lots of organic matter incorporated in depth. But with the years, maybe in 2 or 3 years tops, this type of structure will be moving gradually back towards the way our soil all around in the beds behaves. It has a very high clay content, so the natural structure of the soil is not very friable, it's not very crumbly. If you use a Nordic system, such as we do for the beds, it's not dense, it's not compacted, it's not like a clay pot type structure, but it certainly, you can just dig around with your hands and it falls apart like this. This top layer is mostly the manure which I added, and below the layers which are more contain more of the original soil, they're a bit more dense, and you can see how it sticks to the knife. All those pieces of the original soil, they're not compacted. You can see that they crumble when I press them gently, but if I press more strongly on the soil, they will just form a tight ball of clay, which will be then very hard to break apart. So saying this, the idea is not to try to, we can't afford to replace our soil completely, and we certainly don't want that, because our high clay soil is very rich in minerals and it has great water holding capacity, which works great for the garden in general, because we tend to not water much, even in the height of summer, as a way of managing the garden, the space. But what we can do to improve the situation is to add organic material. However, even for such a small bed, which is like 3 square meters and a bit, we need to add more than 1 cubic meter of organic material, which is to say a well-rotted manure or grass clippings or something like that. Hey, one of the yard cats is coming for some petting. Stop compressing the bed. You can see how fluffy the top layer is. It made indentation from her feet. No? She likes that the soil in the bed is warmer, and down here where I'm standing, it still has some frost from last night. Go on. Iskra na topło.
Tak, no topło.
Go here.
Да.
You can see that that's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy task, and also we don't have the material available. And in time, most of our beds increase their organic matter naturally by our chop and drop action and wheat straw mulch which we do. So they gradually have their organic matter increasing, but the amount of organic matter increases mainly in the top layer and not in depth, not 30 centimeters downward. So in order to do that, you have to double dig the bed. Dig the bed, dig another shovel down, add the organic matter, return the soil, which is way more input of labor and also materials, which I'm inclined to do. So this is the way that it works for us. It's very low labor input and it's slow going, but each year we get increasingly better results, and the soil keeps its main character by retaining most of its clay content, but it's also slowly improving because of the organic matter which we're adding. I might be digging in a cat as well. And this is the covered bed. I used an old brick on each side to keep the plastic down. I put the wooden piece here to hold the edge, and there's another one tucked in on the other end. And this is the drip line which was put here last year for growing, but when we're growing the seeds we don't use the drips because those drips are designed to run in two parallel lines in the bed, so we can grow 4 crops here, 4 rows of small crops, or 3 of larger, or even 2 of tomatoes or something even larger. So we water by hose and a shower head, and this drip line will be saved for using in the bed after the seedlings have been taken out and the actual crop has been planted out. I'm having just a short stroll here in the forest. We've been having a week of colder weather, even though it's actually the normal temperature weather here for late February, early March. The nights have been freezing down to -5, and the days have been maybe 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. But the weather remains weird because in 2 days we will be having a 0-degree day, which is rather cold considering that 10 days ago we had an 18-degree day. And next weekend we'll be having 22-degree daytime and maybe 5 or 10 degrees night temperatures. So you can see that the temperatures fluctuate very wildly. This is not completely unheard of in spring, but it's certainly not something that happens regularly. However, we have to make the most of it, and that's the reason I showed you the seedling bed today, because we want to get an early start this year on the seedlings. We did this in mid-April or something like that last year, and this year we're aiming for maybe mid-March. And as the seedlings will take a little bit longer to germinate because of the cooler temperatures and the fluctuating weather, I think that in the end all will even out, or maybe we'll get just a couple of weeks of earlier readiness for planting the seedlings out. But we'll see about that in the coming days. We've come to test the steps which I made a couple of weeks ago. Heidi? Toddler being very cautious here. This is maybe the first time he climbs here alone. Usually his bigger sister helps him, but I wanted to see if he will manage the steps by himself. I still haven't been able to harvest more black locust for the uprights to continue the steps up in that direction with a gentle turn and then that way. Maybe that will happen in summer, we'll see. So that was all for today, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.